I'm Cynthia Nivyoandi, and welcome to the African News Network. Today, we delve into a story that has shaken Kenya to its core. What started as peaceful protests against a controversial tax hike has turned into a nationwide movement demanding accountability and change from the government. We'll explore the origins of the discontent, the tragic incidences, and the government's response. Kenya has a rich history of protests that dates back to the colonial era and continued well into the post-independence period. Significant democratic gains have been achieved through these protests, including the introduction of multi-party politics in 1991. Many also recall the violent clampdown that followed the disputed 2007 elections, resulting in more than 1,100 deaths. However, what marks this protest from the rest is that in these protests, the youth emerged as a united tribalist group, partyless, leading demonstrations in almost every county across the nation. They garnered support from all sectors of society, including the church, the opposition, labor unions, and professional associations. Elite youth took to the streets alongside children of the middle class, armed with only their phones and backpacks containing essentials like bottles of drinking water. This stands in stark contrast to past protests, which primarily involved individuals from the lowest socioeconomic strata. Demonstrations began on June 18th in response to the proposed new taxes under the Finance Bill 2024. The frustration among Kenyans has been brewing for years due to economic hardship and perceived government insensitivity. The finance bill, which included steep tax increases and cuts to subsidies, was the tipping point. A crisis group expert states that the proposed tax hikes were the spark, but the fire had been smoldering for a long time. Economic hardship, coupled with a sense of betrayal by the government, pushed the people to the streets. The timeline of events is crucial to understanding the scale of this movement. The protests, which began on June 18th, remained largely peaceful until June 25th, when demonstrators took to parliament, leading to violent clashes with police. However, police had previously used tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters, resulting in a tragic incident of one of their own, when a police officer lost both his forearms after a tear gas canister exploded in his hands. Police reports indicate that the security agent sustained severe injuries when he hesitated to release the canister while engaging with protesters. As a result, his two hands were severely injured from the wrist, resulting in the loss of both his forearms, stated a police report obtained by Capital News. On June 25th, demonstrators breached police barricades and stormed the precincts of Parliament, setting parts of City Hall on fire, destroying legislators' offices, and carting away property, including the Speaker's mace. Kenyan police, notorious for their brutality, responded with shooting live fire into the crowds. By the end of the day, the government had called on the military to support the National Police. This escalation resulted in numerous fatalities and widespread destruction. Boniface Mwangi, a prominent civil society campaigner, claimed that politicians had hired goons to infiltrate the marches, blaming police and criminals for the violence that ensued. It is also important to note that protests were not just confined to the capital, Nairobi, but street protests were witnessed in 35 of Kenya's 47 counties. On June 26, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights reported that 39 people had been killed since the protests began. Initially, President William Ruto wavered in his response, suggesting the protests had been hijacked by criminals, while also promising to engage in talks with citizens. However, on June 26th, he conceded and agreed to shelve the contentious Finance Bill 2024.
Consequently, having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024, and listening keenly to the people of Kenya, who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn, and I have agreed with these members that that becomes our collective position.
Despite this, the protests continued, reflecting broader grievances with the governance. President Ruto's administration has faced severe criticism for its harsh response, including the use of live ammunition against protesters. Calls for a peaceful approach have come from both local and international actors. Parents nationwide have been seen crying out to stop killing our children. While the shelving of the finance bill is a step in the right direction, many protesters are driven by deeper issues of governance and economic disparity. The movement is not just about taxes, it's about a systemic demand for better governance and accountability. Historically, Kenya has seen significant political unrest, but this movement is unique in its widespread and youth-driven nature. In conclusion, the government's handling of the protests has sparked widespread condemnation, both domestically and internationally. The use of excessive force resulting in deaths and injuries among unarmed youth and children, along with reports of abductions and torture of protest leaders, has led to grave human rights violations and calls for justice from all quarters. These actions have significantly tarnished trust in authorities. President Ruto's decision to shelve the bill and make several amendments, such as a halt to planned salary increases for state officers, funding for the First Lady's office, and hints at major cabinet and advisor changes, has done little to appease the anger of protesters. Many continue to express distrust in Ruto's sincerity and call for concrete actions to address their grievances. They have articulated clear demands: respect for the Constitution, an end to extrajudicial killings and police abductions, fiscal discipline, transparency in governance, moral integrity in public offices, and an end to corruption, tribalism, and nepotism. Looking ahead, the long-term implications of the government's response remain uncertain. However, one thing is clear: these protests have set a precedent that will redefine expectations for any future government. I'm Cynthia Nifyawandi. Thank you for joining us on the African News Network. Stay tuned for more updates here on our website, mobile app, and social media platforms.